Once again, it's a big day, Cody. We have a very special guest today. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you see that there's a third man in the box right now. Before we introduce him, we got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, the Man Eye Institute. See life better. Make sure for all of your LASIK, all of your vision needs, everything, make sure to go to the Man Eye Institute. We'll throw up the QR code here on the side. Just real quickly here, we don't want to get Mitt completely out of the picture there, but the phone number 844 wow 2020 844 wow 2020. Thanks so much to our great presenting sponsor here on Football with Friends, the Man Eye Institute. Cody, introduce our guest.
Mr. Mitt Winter at Winter Sports Law on X. Mitt, in my opinion, over the course of the last, 6 months to a year is kind of when I've started to follow him more and more on X. Next to like Rob Dellinger, I think these are the two best people on X to follow when it comes to the house settlement situation and pretty much everything in the NIL circle going on in college football and college sports right now. So Mitt Winter, he's attorney, college athletics attorney, business law, sports law, NIL, everything kind of around that conversation. Mitt, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Kind of as you alluded to, there's a lot to talk about right now, a lot to keep track of.
So I guess my first question, first thought, we've gotten a lot of questions. We've been doing this Football with Friends show for about 2 years now. We get a lot of questions from people in the chat about like, what does this mean for the sport? What does this mean for football in specific kind of going forward? And we sometimes don't really know how to answer it. We sometimes like just kind of look at it as like the wild, wild west is kind of where we've been. But with the house settlement now being signed last Friday, what are some things that in your kind of going through it have kind of caught your eye and are just kind of the things that people need to be looking out for in 2025 specifically?
Yeah, I mean, looking forward, the big change that the house settlement is bringing is that schools are going to be able to just directly pay the athletes. Hold on, are you guys hearing some background noise?
No, I'm good on my end.
Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. So the big change with the house settlement is schools are going to be the ones directly paying the athletes now. So for the past 4 years since NIL has been allowed, most of the NIL compensation being paid to athletes has come from NIL collectives and boosters. And collectives are just groups of boosters that pull money together and pay the athletes. Well, now that is going to shift to where, at least theoretically, as long as the rules work the way college athletics wants them to under the house settlement, schools will now be the ones paying most of the NIL compensation to athletes. Schools are going to enter into contracts with athletes that say, here's how much we're paying you, and here are the things you're doing in return for us, the school. These still are not employment contracts. The agreements are going to be NIL licensing agreements, which are very similar to the types of agreements that athletes were entering into with collectives. But instead of the athlete performing services or licensing their NIL rights to a collective, now they're going to be doing that with the school. And so that's like the big difference going forward in college athletics.
Okay, so Mitt, it's all right. This is you just said that these are NIL payments that are under the new revenue sharing agreement.
Yep.
So is that I have many more questions, but I just wanted to clarify this thing with you.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the school is going to? So there's this obviously this NIL clearinghouse they're talking about with the Deloitte auditors, right? Where they assess fair market value. And they've talked about how, as far as the big corporations and as far as like Arch Manning has a deal with Red Bull, right? They'd be more likely to say like that's fair market value because that's the free market expressing itself, while as giving the kid $2 million, who's the defensive lineman, to go to the children's hospital, twice a year. They would look at that coming from the collective. It might not be as likely to pass that. Is that kind of a explain like on 5 way of sort of saying how that's going to work with the clearinghouse and the auditors?
Yeah. So in addition to schools being able to directly pay their athletes, that's a big change. The other big change is what you're referring to. So now there's going to be this new clearinghouse where athletes have to disclose all of their third-party NIL deals.
Okay.
So not the agreements that they enter into with schools, but any third party. So a collective, a booster, Red Bull.
But the revenue sharing portion is not going to be eligible to be scrutinized by the NIL clearinghouse, even though you're saying they are NIL payments.
That's correct. So schools, their NIL deals, they can pay as much as they want, have the athletes do as much or as little as they want in return for those payments. No one's going to be looking at those and saying, hey, you're paying them too much.
Ooh, I didn't realize that part. Because I mean, that's technically that's $20 million. That's kind of like you said, it's kind of like not. It's
and
capped.
Is that the number? They say between 20 and 22 million. Like, have they settled on it?
For the first year, it's going to be $20.5 million.
And is that between all sports?
Correct. So that's how much a school can pay to all of its athletes in the first year of the settlement.
Do you have any idea, like from your experience, how that gets allocated? Are some schools going to say, dude, this is all going to football, or this is all going to football, basketball? Maybe we'll have some leftovers to give to the girls soccer players, or something. If we got some superstar like the Texas Tech, softball pitcher, something like is that how it's going to be? Is this mainly going to football?
Definitely. So at least at the P4 level, at most schools, it's going to be 75 to 80% going to football. So 15, 16, whatever that number is, around 15% men's basketball. At a lot of places, around 5% women's basketball. And then that remaining 5% divided up, baseball, softball, track and field, whatever sports they want to put on. So like 90% is going to football and men's basketball. Some schools even more than that. I've heard some up to like 95% to those two sports.
Wow. This just bizarre. So Brian Seeley was named the inaugural CEO of the College Sports Commission, which is, to my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially going to be kind of working in partner, it sounds like, with Deloitte in this kind of overseeing of the third party stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the CSC, College Sports Commission, they are the new entity that's going to be in charge of enforcing all of these new athlete compensation rules. So the $20.5 million cap, they're going to be in charge of making sure schools stay within that cap. The new third-party NIL rules, they're going to be in charge of making sure athletes disclose their NIL deals. And where Deloitte comes in, Deloitte is the entity that's contracted with CSC to review those third-party NIL deals to see whether they're for, quote, a valid business purpose. So you need to make a distinction. When an athlete discloses their deals, the first thing that Deloitte is going to look at is who's the entity paying the athlete. If it's what they call an associated entity or individual, which just means collective or booster, really, then it's going to go to these next two levels of review and say, all right, this deals with a collective or booster. Is the deal for a, quote, valid business purpose, i.e. not pay for play in disguise? If it passes that test, then it goes to, all right, is the amount being paid to the athlete within the appropriate range of compensation? And Deloitte's going to do those steps, and then they'll tell the College Sports Commission, hey, this deal's fine, no issues. Or they'll say, hey, College Sports Commission, we've flagged this deal. We think it's not within the appropriate range of compensation. Then at that point, it's up to the College Sports Commission to tell the athlete, all right, we have some problems with this deal. You can go ahead and do it if you want to. We're not going to tell you you can't, but if you are going to do it, you're going to be potentially ineligible to play sports. Or the athlete's going to be able to go back and say, hey, collective and booster, we need to renegotiate this to a different value. Or then the athlete can choose to say, I think I should be able to do this deal at the value it is. I'm going to go to arbitration and tell you why this deal is fine the way it is. So that's kind of how that process is going to work.
This is going to create a whole cottage industry of arbitrators that are going to handle, because that's what they're going to. I know that's what I would do. I'd say, yeah. You're going to tell me what I'm worth, and right. like yeah. I'm worth what the market says that I'm worth, and that, right. People are going to. There's going to be all kinds of new presidents and stuff set, and they're going to say like, well, what about in 2025 the case of Jackson Cantwell, there's going to be like it's going to be like case law, the whole new thing. Yeah. But as far as as far as like when you keep talking about when they disclose their deals, who's going to enforce that they disclose their deals?
College Sports Commission.
And how are they going to?
That's a good question because the person that's supposed to disclose the deals is the athlete. It's not the school; it's the athlete. So they're relying on the athlete disclosing their deals. And if you talk to a lot of people that have been involved in NIL since it's been a thing, number one, they know that a lot of NIL deals do not get disclosed. Even though every school tells their athletes you're supposed to disclose your deals to us, a lot of schools say like 20% of actual deals are actually being disclosed by athletes. So it's up to the athletes. Their agents will be able to help them, and schools can like tell their athletes they need to disclose these deals. But that's a good point. Like, how are they going to know what deals an athlete has to disclose in the first place and know if they haven't disclosed it? I think that's going to be a problem.
And what is the incentive to disclose it? You're signing up for a financial proctology exam here, to where they're going to tell you, you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to talk to this collective about, like, you need to go out and renegotiate this deal to where they're giving you less money, or else you could possibly need to sit out. It's like, I'm like, well, hold on, wait. I'm taking less money. I might have to sit out. I might be disqualified. Like, none of those things sound good to me. Why would I ever disclose? Right. And I'm wondering if there's an enforcement mechanism. Like, are they attached with the IRS to where when they don't
have subpoena power, so they can't go and say, hey, show us your bank records. Did you get paid by this booster or this collective? They can't really do that. So I agree. I think it's going to be an issue of deals just won't be disclosed. And I don't know how they're going to know if they do. Like, I guess, so it's almost like the way the NCAA has been since its full existence. Like, they don't go out and really do investigations until someone kind of tips them off. Say, hey, so-and-so, you might want to look into what's going on over here at this school. We think somebody's paying them under the table. So I guess they're going to have to sort of rely on that sort of, anonymous tips like they have in the past, because otherwise I don't see how they're going to know what deals and athletes have or not.
So this feels like a little bit of taboo to kind of bring up, but I read an article on The Athletic, and then I saw something come up on On3 the other day, two different versions of kind of stuff outside of pocket in comparison to just like, cap money or NIL deals classically. But the column on The Athletic was about the return of the bag man, which, the McDonald's bag full of cash thing from back in the day, potentially being a return. And one of the notes from in here was like, if some donor wants to wire a player $25,000 a month, who's keeping track of that? That came from one power conference administrator. The other thing came from On3. It was like, I think we may see less money being exchanged and more like favors being exchanged, like private jets, things of this nature. Does that feel like, and I know it feels like taboo to kind of talk about it, but kind of like you said, it's that they're not going to go dig into it unless they're tipped off about it. Is that something you think maybe is going to be more likely over the course of the next couple of years, at least?
Yeah, I think so. And one good reason is, so right now we talked about the salary cap. It's going to be $20.5 million. There are teams at schools, just one sport, being paid more than that right now. So you're going to tell a football team and their agents, all right, we know the payroll for the team this year is $30 million. Next year, it's going to drop to $15 million. So you're going to take a, pay cut. You're going to be cut in half. People are probably going, that's not going to work for me. So I agree. There's probably going to be some more like under the table stuff happening, because also they're trying to really limit the third party stuff with collectives as well with the NIL Go and disclosure part. So instead of trying to push stuff through that clearinghouse, people will probably just go to, all right, I'm just going to pay you under the table, or like you said, I'm just going to wire you some money, which everyone knows that's how things worked in high-level college athletics, ever since its existence. And people have gotten more used to it now, doing it above the table. And so I think it's going to be hard to tell people, oh, you can't do this anymore, when the last 4 years, it's kind of how everything's worked, and the coaches have gotten used to it, and the boosters have gotten used to it, and the players have gotten used to it. So it's gonna be hard to put that genie back in the bottle, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the toothpaste is already well out of the tube on that whole thing. That whole thing. All right, Mitt. Last one from me. I know Cody might have another, but just general. I think about it a lot. I love college football, man. How's this gonna? Can you crystal ball this thing for us? I mean, like, is this gonna fix stuff? And if you were in charge, what would your policy prescriptions be for I know there's been all this stuff and people, it sounds, this whole good of the game thing. And I know that the SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey, was like, look, I'm not here for the good of the game. I'm not, but I know it sounds hokey. I kind of care about the good of the game. Like, how is this going to, is this going to fundamentally change the haves and the have-nots in college football? Is it going to get rid of parity? And what would be your policy prescriptions for the best way to move forward into this new era?
I mean, it's going to broaden the divide that already exists between P4 and G5. That gap's pretty large already, but it's going to get bigger because the G5s, maybe with a few exceptions, are not going to be approaching $15 million payrolls for their football teams. So the best players are going to keep going to the P4s, but as we've seen the last 4 years, there will probably be a continuation of best players at G5. If they do well, they're going to move up to the P4. So it's going to be hard for G5 to keep their best players, which has already been a thing, but I think that'll continue on. In terms of like what the future looks like, I don't think the House settlement terms will be like the final resting place for the college athletics model. A lot of it is going to be dependent on what happens at the federal level. There's actually another federal hearing going on right now on a bill that would basically codify the terms of the House settlement into federal law. I don't think there's enough support, at least right now, to get a law like that passed.
Do you know how close is that one of those ones that has to go 60-40?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would need 60 votes in the Senate.
Okay, but you're not sure that they're going to have the votes.
From what I hear from people right now, I don't even know if there's votes in the House for it, and then the Senate too.
Got it.
There's not enough bipartisan support from what I'm hearing. So short of a federal law happening, if I crystal ball it, which is everyone's crystal ball and all this stuff is pretty cloudy right now. I think we'll get to some model where at the P4 level, maybe some of the athletes are employees and there's a collective bargaining agreement between the athletes on those teams that are part of this new highest level and the entity that's running that level of football, whether it's the CFP or some new governing entity for college football or conferences or whoever it is. The reason I say that is because if you collectively bargain rules like that, they become exempt from antitrust law. And that's the reason that the NCAA and college athletics can't put in rules that without being sued all the time. Is because their competitors getting together, setting limits on compensation and player movement, stuff like that. They violate antitrust law.
Cody, I know I said it was my last question, but I just have one quick follow up to that. And then I'll to it.
You good?
Do you foresee with making the possibility of making the student athletes into more employee level stuff? Could that also usher in an era of like buyouts or paybacks to these various payments? If you want to transfer out, you got to pay back the money that we gave you, or the new school has to buy it out, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's already going to happen with the contracts that the schools are entering into with athletes.
Oh, that's going to happen with the House settlement money.
Yeah. So,
okay.
And those contracts, some of them have buyouts. So athletes have already entered into contracts with buyouts. They're even in some collective contracts. So we'll see that might limit some of the movement that's been happening. If the buyouts are enforceable and everything like that. And for a buyout to be effective, the agreements need to be multi-year agreements. Buyouts don't really work with just 1 year agreements. And most schools right now have not been entering into multi-year agreements. Maybe that'll change in the coming years. But yeah, there's definitely going to be buyouts in Not all the agreements, but I've definitely seen it in some of the athlete agreements.
I just got one more question for you pertaining to the house settlement stuff. You had a tweet earlier this week. I think it was a quote tweet on Dan Wetzel, and it was about kind of all the other sports outside of football and how the impact is kind of, I know we've heard wrestling, volleyball, track, swimming, things of this nature, like the Olympic sports, and potential of, de-emphasizing, I think is the way you wrote it, certain sports and moving them to club status. Is that something you actually think could take place? And like, what's the timeline for that? I know there's been a lot of smaller schools, like the Kennesaw State level schools, that have, cut sports and stuff like this. But do you really think that'll happen at the P4 level and in the near future?
Maybe in certain instances it might, if a school is like experiencing a cash crunch and like we can't keep funding this sport at this level, so we're just going to move it down to club status. Or if we look a few years down the road and some athletes are employees and a school's like, all right, we're cool with our football team and our men's basketball team being employees, but we don't want to have all of our teams have the athletes be employees. So maybe we're going to operate our rowing team in a different way than we operate football and basketball. So we make sure they don't cross that line into being employees. So rowing will look more like a club sport. I can see that in the future as well.
So more of just logistics than anything on that side.
Yeah, logistics and how much control coaches have over the players and stuff like that.
Mitt, tell them where they can find you on X or wherever your socials, websites, how they can keep up with you.
Yeah, on X, just at Winter Sports Law. And then LinkedIn I use a lot too, just Mitt Winter. And those are kind of the two main platforms I use these days.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, man, and for being here with us. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody for watching. Please like the show, subscribe to the channel, man. We see you guys here every night, so come back tomorrow. It'll be a big Final Takes Friday, Cody.
Yes, sir.
All right. Love you guys. God bless you. For Cody, I'm Alex. We're done.